What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Waste World Podcast. I'm your host, Gage Edwards, and today we are diving into one of the most complex and pressing environmental challenges facing the industry right now, PFAS. Also known as forever chemicals, but maybe they aren't quite forever. Our conversation is going to cover that today. These compounds, these PFAS, are showing up across water systems, waste streams, the industrial processes, creating a growing need for solutions that don't just contain the problem, but actually eliminate it. See, we're cutting out that PFAS word, or cutting out that forever word, actually. We're cutting out the PFAS, cutting out forever. Let's get to the podcast. Before the jump, let's make sure we're sharing the podcast with somebody. We are subscribing to the show, leaving a rating, leaving a review, letting someone know, like, hey, this was a cool conversation. You should check this out. Enjoy. Joining me today is Alexis Wells Carpenter, Chief Innovation Officer at AxNano, a clean tech company focused on developing and scaling technologies to treat contaminated water and complex waste systems. Alexis brings a unique perspective at the intersection of science, waste management, and commercialization. She has played a key role in advancing AxNano's work in PFAS treatment and destruction, helping move solutions from the lab to real-world deployment across municipal, industrial, and defense applications. Alexis, welcome to the Waste World Podcast. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me today, Gage.
I appreciate you braving the elements of North Carolina, the pollen-ridden that you had talked about in your email that you sent me.
Yeah, it's Pollinageddon, which it's just the beginning of it, and there's already a yellow hue out the window.
Yeah, it's like spring's nice, but then like you just don't want to be out in it for long because you're like, my face is going to close up on this. I don't want that. Ugh,
yes.
Terrible. But I'm tired of the winter, so I guess I'll take the good with the bad, I suppose.
100%. Yeah, we're going to go camping tonight because the weather is getting warmer, so it's time to get outside.
Camping is not my wheelhouse whatsoever, so enjoy it. I'm going to stay inside away from the elements as much as I can. Alexis, let's go through a quick overview of what AxNano does and the problems you're trying to solve there, as well as an introduction of yourself to the listeners.
Great. So AxNano really focuses on kind of the hardest problems around, we're really narrowing in on PFAS, but we see PFAS as an opportunity for us to rethink how do we manage these really difficult waste streams and these emerging contaminants, because there will always be another emerging contaminant. And so our technology is supercritical water oxidation, which is really great at destroying a really wide range of organic contaminants. So we're really thinking about how do we future-proof our technology and help our customers future-proof their operations by dealing with PFAS and some of these other things. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. And then for myself, I'm a chemist by training. I hang out with a bunch of engineers, but I'm not an engineer. I actually got into, in graduate school, was more into biomedical engineering and doing drug development. And then I had a professor that was asking me about the tanker trucks of solvent going down the road to support the synthesis I was working on. And it was really, I had never thought about kind of the impacts of the work that I was doing in terms of the waste that I was generating. And so after graduate school, I got into environmental engineering and have been in this area ever since.
Mm. Now, I guess you might not feel this way as a chemist, but I get to hang out with engineers here and there. And when I talk to them, I'm just like, wow, you guys see the world so differently than I do.
Isn't it great? It's great that we don't all see the world the same, because we probably wouldn't get very much done.
We wouldn't get much done if everybody thought of the world like me, where I'm just like, yeah, we'll leave it alone. It's fine. It'll work itself out. Doesn't need any help. Thank God we have people like you and all the engineers you guys get to hang out with, because we need some things to happen.
Yes.
So we're talking PFAS, major topic across the industry right now. It's popping up in basically everything I'm writing about or even looking up on the internet in this space. Listeners who might not be so familiar, what is PFAS? What are PFAS, and why are they such a challenge?
Yeah, PFAS. We call them the four-letter word. So it's really interesting. They are this really large group of chemicals. There's tens of thousands of different types of PFAS, and some of them we don't even know what they are. And that's what makes them really difficult to
Ugh.
study because it's a constantly moving target. Um, they have been around for a really long time, since about the 1940s, and they're used in all kinds of things from uh, firefighting foam to textiles and food packaging. They're really important. They do a lot of important things, and we need them in a lot of our products and services that we use. But the problem with them is that they're fully synthetic. So they're 100% man-made and they don't break down naturally. So what this means is that they persist. They don't break down completely naturally. They kind of get out into the environment and they get into our food and our water. And now we all have PFAS in our blood. So
Fun.
that's something to work on.
We're all connected in this horrible way.
Yes, yeah. But again, I think the reality is that we need these type of chemicals. We need them for things like our electronics. And so our approach at AxNano is we just need to think about how can we better manage the waste that has PFAS in them, because we're not going to get rid of them. We do need to be a bit more smart and sort of choosy about when we do use them in products. But really, we're focused on how do we manage the waste streams that have PFAS in them, going up the stream, dealing with it at the point source so that we can prevent them from being released. And then once they get released, it's just a much bigger, more expensive problem there.
Yeah, I guess so, because they're so, I don't want to say versatile because that sounds positive,
Yeah.
but like just persistent. Is that what makes them, compared to other contaminants, so difficult to treat?
So what makes them difficult to treat is that they're made from carbon and fluorine together. And I remember in my general chemistry classes learning about the periodic table, right? And there's this little fluorine molecule just sitting up in the upper right corner. And it's really special because it's very small, it's very mighty. And so it turns out that fluorine is a special element. And so that's why it's used in PFAS. And because of these special properties around it, that carbon fluorine bond is really, really hard to break. And that's exactly why it's used for high temperature things, right? And so because that carbon fluorine bond is really hard to break, that's why the full PFAS compounds don't fully break down under our traditional methods like microbial degradation or some of the more traditional oxidation methods that we use in wastewater treatment. And as they persist, they kind of just the PFAS gets passed along, and then they aggregate into things like biosolids, which then get put on our farms for food, and then end up in our food. So,
are we just our own worst enemy when it comes to this space, where we're like, yeah, let's make plastic. That seems really durable. Oh, we made too much plastic. What have we done?
It seems so, right? I've been learning about this concept called the dual challenge, which is talked a lot about in the energy sector, because we need more energy, right? Just the lives that we live, we're not going to get around it. And so the dual challenge talks about how can we take better use of the resources that we have and generate energy more efficiently, while also keeping in mind that we can't have negative impacts of that energy that we're generating, right? We have to think about emissions and that kind of thing. And I think that dual challenge exists also definitely in the waste management industry, and certainly within PFAS, where we have to think about, we're not going to get rid of these waste, and we need new solutions for how to address it. But we have to think about the dual challenge. We have to think about both the inputs and the outputs as we're trying to solve this problem. And humans are smart. We solve problems all the time. PFAS was developed as a solution to solve a problem. And so now we just have to solve that problem that has come out of solving the problem.
Yeah, we made it too powerful.
Yeah.
In my world, this is a comic book movie. We're like, oh, he got too strong and now he's evil. Great.
Yeah. But I will say, when I started in this industry, probably, 15 years ago, PFAS was the forever chemical.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, how are we going to destroy this? You can't do anything with it. And now it turns out it's not forever and we can destroy it. We just need the right tools. We need the right technology. It is going to be very different than what we've done in the past. We have to change our behavior from what we've done in the past, which is hard sometimes to do.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. And there's technologies like supercritical water oxidation that AxNano is developing, but also even traditional things like electrochemistry and some of the other methods really can be used for PFAS destruction. It's not a question of can we do it? It's more of how do we make it work efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about some of that technology that you guys focus on-site point source treatment. Why is that shift from centralized systems to decentralized solutions so important?
So we have a history in the US in particular of sort of just packaging up our waste and sending it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that elsewhere is typically in the middle of nowhere, right? Because
do we think we just can't see it? The problem's gone. What are we thinking?
Yeah. That is part of the problem. As a side tangent, I think it would be really helpful if every middle schooler in the US had to go visit a landfill or a wastewater treatment plant. This is my goal when I get some free time sometime soon.
Hoping for that.
Yeah, because without knowing where our waste goes, we don't know where our waste goes,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not top of mind. We throw things in the garbage and it leaves our house and we don't think about it. And so we really need to have these problems front of mind so that we can start solving them. And in terms of really getting at the point source, instead of shipping waste away and sort of putting it in a landfill, which is really just storage, right? We're not solving the problem. We're just displacing it. Really, we now know as an industry that it's a lot cheaper to deal with it point source than it is to wait for it to be released and then have to deal with it under a huge remediation project. And then especially when it comes to PFAS, a lot of the work is being driven by liability risks. And so that's driving people more to, okay, let me deal with this at the point source. Let me deal with it when I have a bit more control over it so that I can control that liability risk a bit more.
Gotcha.
And then not to mention, there's a lot of impacts of shipping waste, especially for EU companies. There's, sustainability goals and scope 1 and scope 2 and scope 3 metrics that they're trying to meet. And so shipping tanker trunks of solvent across the US in order to deal with your waste is not helping them meet those sustainability goals. So it's a liability and a sustainability driven metric, as well as cost too. Driving waste across the country is very expensive.
Right.
And so if we can do on-site treatment, we can drive down those costs.
Yeah, I think people kind of get really behind out of sight, out of mind practices when it comes to waste, not realizing like that out of sight portion is creating so much more issues down the road. We're like, if we could just figure this out step 1, we could save a lot of headache.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk about how closely you've worked with the Department of Defense. So what makes PFAS such a significant issue for military sites specifically?
Yeah.
So I can get through that word.
Yeah. So the DoD is really ground zero for PFAS contamination, but I would also say ground zero for PFAS like treatment innovation. The reason that the DoD has such a liability around PFAS is that it's a key component of aqueous film forming foams. Say that one 10 times fast.
You guys have such crazy things I have to learn in this space. I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah, that's why it's all acronyms. So AFFF is what it's known as.
Perfect.
So the Department of Defense uses a lot of AFFF to put out fuel-based fires. And they use a lot of it in training because you want to make sure that your folks are trained in how to put these fires out. And so what that has meant is that the PFAS that was in these firefighting foams are used in training and in firefighting. They get sprayed out into the environment, and then it rains or goes into a creek, and then it releases from there.
Mm-hmm.
And what that has amounted to is that there's now more than 700 military installations that have known or suspected PFAS releases, and they're impacting groundwater and surface waters of nearby communities. So really for the military, it's not just an environmental issue. It's really around they need their warfighters to be ready and trained, but they also have interest in protecting their people on base and their people in the community. And so that's why the DoD has also done a really great job of funding a lot of the technology development and demonstrations in this space. We were really fortunate to be part of another acronym, ESTCP, which is a group that funds a lot of these technology transition programs. And then we also have had funding from the Army and the Air Force and Navy, really around how do we test these technologies in a realistic environment, because the problem's very urgent. And so we need to make sure that the solutions are shovel ready and can be implemented quickly.
Nice. A lot going into it. A lot of head scratching going into PFAS.
It is. Yeah. It's definitely a big problem. It's a podcast, so you can't see me using air quotes.
Quotes.
Yeah, it's the podcast air quotes. But really, it's an opportunity for us to say, okay, we didn't do that so well. How can we do this better? Mm-hmm. Because there will always be something else. And we're hoping that the lessons learned from managing PFAS and implementing novel technologies so that we can deal with PFAS will set us up better for whatever the next emerging contaminant might be.
PFAS too.
Yeah, PFAS too. That's right. Microplastics, bring it on.
Oh, no.
Then we got brominated flame retardants. We'll just keep moving down the periodic table.
The Avengers of environmental issues.
Yeah,
Can't stand it. All right, so environmental issues there. We also know that PFAS comes in with financial and operational liabilities. What are you seeing how are you seeing that play out?
Yeah, PFAS is really changing the balance sheets. It's no longer is it just PFAS waste as an overhead cost. It's really how do we mitigate long-term liability risks? Mm-hmm. And so we see that play out all the way from county-owned municipalities all the way up to privately owned organizations that have PFAS in their supply chain. And they're really thinking about how do we solve this problem, because there's now a precedent of 3M, litigation. And so folks now know that they need to implement solutions now to protect themselves against future liabilities. There was a really interesting panel at the Global Waste Management Symposium that we met at. And it was led by Anne Germain at the National Waste and Recycling Association, where they really laid out very clearly this whole discussion on who's responsible, right? And mm-hmm. thinking about our municipal wastewater treatment plants and whether or not they're passive receivers, and who's going to bear the cost of all of this. So it's an ongoing debate. We'll see what the final answer is, but I can say from what AxNano sees is we are seeing a lot more interest in people looking for non-landfill, non-incineration solutions that they can have better control over what's happening with their waste so that they can mitigate that long-term liability.
Gotcha. And a shout out to Anne Germain, one of the busiest ladies I've come across. Every event I go to, she's also there. I'm like, how are you doing this?
She must have a clone.
Must be, yeah. Whatever she's doing it right. All right. Let's talk about how you've worked full life cycle. We're talking lab to field development. I hate to give more doom and gloom to this, but what are some of the bigger challenges in scaling a solution like this?
Yeah. And every challenge is an opportunity, right?
Right.
So I there's really two main buckets that I put these challenges in. There's obviously the technical challenge, mm-hmm. which I'll talk about in a minute, but there's also the people challenge. And what I mean by the people challenge is that you really have to find people that are willing to be your champions, right? Because at the end of the day, you could have the best technology that could solve the biggest problem. But if you don't have people advocating for you and people that are willing to change their mindset of, I was doing this and now I'm willing to try this other option, then we won't have technology adoption. So it's really around finding those champions that will help you along the way, finding those early adopters that are willing to say, yes, bring your system onto my site and we will give it a try. Especially in this industry where liability risks are high, right? And so that leads to a lot of risk aversion of trying new things where, no one ever got fired for buying IBM, right? So finding those people that are willing to try new things, and then those people that not only are willing to try new things, but have the patience to know that new technologies aren't going to work perfectly the first time. So they have that patience to be with you along the way as you're testing out those technologies in realistic environments. The sooner you can get out of the lab, you're just going to learn so much more by being in those realistic environments. And then finding those people that not only will partner with you in the testing, but be your advocate as you move along. Because sales and marketing are expensive line items in your budget, right? So you really need those industry folks that are advocating for you and helping spread the word.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the technical challenges, I mean, it's all about scaling. It is, things might work beautiful in the lab, and then as soon as you scale up, it's like you're starting from scratch. So we really focus on high technology readiness level solutions at AxNano. We recognized early on not only the scale, but the opportunity within the PFAS market was so big and so urgent that we needed to source a technology that wasn't brand new, right? And so supercritical water oxidation, which is our destruction method, has been around for decades. And so we knew, okay, this technology has been around for decades in a different application, a different industry, but at least we know it can operate at scale under some environment. So addressing that technical challenge by really not starting at square one, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of really great technologies out there that have been used for other applications, and thinking about how can you repurpose it for the thing that you're looking at. One big lesson learned that I'll share from our field development was making sure that your system is very robust, because especially in the waste world, the waste is going to be very different, right? It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You might think you're going to get a nice smooth nougat, and you end up with a sticky caramel full of like big cashews, right?
Sounds like a win-win to me.
Yeah. And so just making sure that you're building your system so that they're robust to have a wider range of intakes than what you might think you might be getting. That was a key learning for us.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Now, we touched on this a little earlier, and I want to circle back to see if you had any more insight to it, because something you brought up to me is the dual challenge. You had said we need more energy, more infrastructure, more development. We also need to manage the environmental impact that comes with it. And so where is PFAS really fitting into that conversation?
Yeah. So I just think PFAS is such a good opportunity for us to rethink how we manage these complex waste streams, because it is getting so much attention. PFAS is getting a lot of attention, all the way from, just regular communities all the way up to the Pentagon, right? And so the funding is following that, and we better take advantage of this, right? And so the dual challenge is especially true for climate and energy technologies. There's this great book, it's called Disciplined Entrepreneurship in Climate and Energy Tech by Ben Soltoff and his colleagues at MIT. We use it in a course at Duke that I have the pleasure of helping to teach, which is called Design Climate. And it's all around, number one, make sure you're solving a real problem, right? Don't spend a bunch of time and money on a technology that nobody wants and nobody wants to pay for. So make sure that you're solving a real problem. And then this dual challenge component comes in and it says, don't only solve the problem, but make sure that you're not creating more problems behind you. And that's really true when we think about PFAS treatment. So in the world of PFAS treatment, there's a lot of steps, but mostly it comes down to capture and concentrate the PFAS and then destroy it. And what AxNano is focused on is there are a lot of great people out there doing the capture and the concentrate, and then what do we do with those residuals? So if it's in a solid form or if it's in a liquid form, maybe it's a really high salt waste stream that is difficult to treat with some of the other technologies. So we're focused on like what's the residuals coming out of that concentration step and how can we destroy those so that there's nothing on the back end. Mm-hmm. One of the nice things about supercritical water oxidation is that you're getting complete oxidation, nearly complete mineralization of any organic contaminant coming in. So when everything works well, all carbon that goes in comes out as CO2, and you're really getting elimination of all of those contaminants. And what better way to address the dual challenge than to just eliminate all the bad stuff at the end, right?
Right. It sounds like what it should be.
It's great. It's hard though, because it is, it's a hard process to do, and there's a lot of waste out there. So one thing we're really focused on is how do we meet the throughput that our current systems can handle now. Right now, we kind of have a maximum throughput that we can meet. And so the question is not, well, let's just focus on increasing the throughput. It's how do we take what we have right now and solve the problems that we can solve right now while also working on, the next solution that has a higher throughput. We joke, but it's true that there's a lot of PFAS. There's enough PFAS out there for everybody, right? We need so many solutions. We need incineration. We need supercritical water oxidation. We need electrochemistry. We need all of these methods because there's so much PFAS out there, and they're in so many different waste like forms. Mm-hmm. And there's small volumes, there's large volumes, there's PFAS on islands where we can't necessarily set up a whole brand new incinerator, right? You can't or do landfilling. So where are there opportunities where small modular systems can really have a high impact? And then where are the opportunities where larger systems that can handle higher throughput can have a bigger impact?
Yeah. This really is an industry of opportunity because there's never a dull moment. There's never work that's not to be done. So that sounds like job security, everybody at home. Right. Listen, get in here and stay here.
Yeah. That's right.
Two things you mentioned there I want to touch on. One, Duke. Are you a basketball fan? How are things feeling on the university?
Okay. I am a teacher. I am a professor at Duke, but in my heart, I'm actually a Hokie. Don't tell them. Oh,
okay.
Don't let them know.
My mouth I'm zip tight. No way I would say anything. Yeah,
so
it's funny.
I keep up with it enough to know what to talk about the next day. So I know Duke had a real sad loss the other day.
I don't know if real sad covers it.
I mean, kind of unbelievable, right? They were up by 18 or something points, and then
a misery of unfortunate problems leading to the last second of the game. Don't need to spend a long time on that. I'm also a Virginia raised person, so I get that.
Oh, what part of Virginia?
Northern Virginia. So I grew up in Loudoun County, Frederick County. I live right over the border in West Virginia now because it's cheaper to live here.
Yeah. So it's beautiful too. Yeah.
Yeah. But never was a Duke or UNC fan. So the Carolinas didn't do anything for me. So, but I wasn't rooting against them.
Yeah.
Just a shocking moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a good story, and never give up. Right?
Yeah.
Never give up.
I wish Duke probably would have came out on the other side of that, but you know what? There's an opportunity here for next year for some of those kids.
That's right. That's right.
Another thing you mentioned, the Pentagon. So I want to talk a little bit about policy. Regulators were driving innovation in this space. Innovation, is that starting to outpace policy we're seeing?
Yeah, it's so tough. I would say it's a little bit of both. So we are certainly seeing a lot more adoption of the treatment technologies now that there are regulations being put in place. Mm-hmm. Regulations, so EPA has drinking water advisory levels, and and I would say it's at the federal level, but it's also at the state level. A lot of the states are driving some of that heavier regulation. And even some of the municipalities are putting more focus on it than others. So I think having those regulations either in place or kind of threatening to be put in place is driving adoption of technologies, which the adoption of technologies then drives investment into companies that are developing those technologies. But I would also say that the innovation and the development of solutions helps those people whose job it is to put regulations in place, which is a very hard job to do. It gives them some comfort that, okay, if I put this regulation in place, my stakeholders aren't going to be hamstrung and they actually can meet these regulations that I'm putting. So it's a bit circular. Certainly there's more regulations on drinking water, obviously. I hope that the regulations on the waste management increase a bit, because that's really where the drinking water eventually gets impacted from. But drinking water typically does come first. We are seeing some delays in regulations, which is nice to see that it's not an elimination of the regulation. It's just, okay, we need a few more years to make sure that everyone can get technologies that they need and get the funding in place that they need as well. I think it's important that we keep in mind we really don't pay much for waste management here in the US, and that's probably going to change, right? And we need to, things will start hopefully costing a bit more so that we can choose more sustainable solutions.
Yeah. I imagine that pushback might be a lot on the public, but the education
there needs to be. Hopefully the cost goes on the folks that can afford it and are generating the waste, and it doesn't trickle down to.
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I've been wrong before.
Yeah, that's a topic for another podcast.
Right.
But another point to your question on regulation, from AxNano's perspective as a startup, it's really risky to have a startup and a business strategy that is wholly dependent on regulation. It's not a good idea. And so
word for the wise out there.
Yeah, not a good, because regulation can change, right? And so it's good to have regulation motivating your market and your customers and your end users, but you can't have that be the deciding factor. And so we're really focused on those industries and customers that certainly know PFAS regulations are coming or maybe are being put in place right now, but are looking at our technology and our solution more as a way to drive down their future liability, drive down their current costs too. It ultimately always comes down to cost, and really helping them to be well positioned. If they adopt the technologies now, then they'll be well positioned to meet those future regulations. And that would just be like icing on the cake. So that's kind of how we're approaching it. The regulations are helpful in terms of driving innovation and adoption, but innovative technologies can't wait for regulations.
Right. Do you think it's a combination of those things, regulations, money, people just doing stuff that needs to happen for solutions to move faster from pilot projects to adoption?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head, right?
I think you hit it. I'm just repeating what you said.
Oh, well, you said it more eloquently. Yes. Yeah, we do. We need investment. It does cost money, especially these energy and clean tech startups. It's a very capital intensive process, much more so than developing an app, right? And so we need that investment, and investors have risks that they're trying to mitigate too, and so it's all part of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you had one thing to pick in the industry one thing in the industry that is underestimating about PFAS right now, what would it be?
So I think there's a couple of things that we need. One is we need some clear performance metrics. A lot of times what we hear is we want our wastewater treated to drinking water standards, because there aren't standards for wastewater yet. And treating to drinking water is quite hard. It's 4 parts per trillion. and nobody's drinking the water coming out of our system. So it would be nice to have some clear performance metrics that are reasonable in terms of thinking about the cost of treatment per volume treated and what's the end goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If what's coming out of our system is going to be direct discharge to surface water, which is not very likely, or is it going to be direct discharge to a POTW or some other downstream treatment? Clear performance metrics are also really important because there's so many different treatment technologies, and everybody wants to present their technology in the best way possible, which then makes it hard for the customer and end user to choose what's the best one. So we need some clear performance metrics so that customers can choose what's the right selection for them, and so that the technology vendors and developers know what we're targeting. And then we need really focus in repeatable field data. And what I mean by that is we need the opportunity to run these systems in operational environments for extended periods of time so that we can get true repeatable information on performance and cost. And then the last part of it, which doesn't have to do too much with the technology at all, is the procurement pathway, right? So as people are being forced to choose new methods, the DoD is being forced to really think about how they manage their PFAS waste, and other industries too. They can't choose the same options that they have in the past. And so if they can't choose the past options, then they need a clear pathway to safely choose new options. And so I think this comes about through good public-private partnerships. The DoD is doing a really good job of not only testing these technologies, but working through some of the workflow of, okay, this technology has been proven. Now we need to figure out a way that their procurement folks can use it easily. There was a recent memo released also by the DoD that released the moratorium on incineration of PFAS. And within that memo, not only did they say you can incinerate it as long as you're operating under these conditions, here's the study that justifies PFAS destruction under those conditions, but they also said, and here's other technologies such as supercritical water oxidation, which is one that they listed as an allowable alternative when it's cost competitive. So we're starting to get enough data and enough kind of pilot and full-scale deployments under our belt that we can say, this is a real solution that people can choose. And we need as many of those as we can because there's so much PFAS out there.
It's a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. Yeah. And then other than that, just sending all of our kids to water and wastewater and landfill for field trips so that
educate them early.
Yeah. So we have an appreciation for that.
Right. Get to them before they become stubborn adults. They just don't want to do stuff, right?
Yeah. Because it's all behavioral change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, we can have the best technologies, but if we don't have the mindset to change, then we won't, right?
Right.
There's all kinds of exercise equipment out there, but I don't use them every day, right? It's a behavioral change that we have to.
I don't even look at them every day,
yeah.
Let alone using them. Alexis, we covered a lot today. I feel like we talked about everything. So I'm going to open up the floor just in case. Was there something we didn't cover that you want to throw at me right now?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan of podcasts, and now I'm a subscriber for Waste 360, which my kids love hearing about when they get in the car. So my question for you, one of the things I talked about is the importance of people and advocacy and kind of helping create the environment where people have the opportunity to choose new options and have the opportunity to know that they might fail, right? And be okay with that and kind of have that safe space of trying new things. So my question to you is, are there any, as you bring new guests onto your field, I would love to talk about your podcast to other people. And if there's any other areas that you see that are of interest for the public besides PFAS.
I mean, all of them. I feel like the people I try to put on the podcast are people who are doing pretty cool stuff. We do our our policy talks, our regular recycling talks, but like in the last month, I mean, a little more than that, I had a podcast that was about sustainable underwear. Underwear made with plastic free. This shirt I'm wearing right now is compostable because they sent it to me. Thank you, Kent, wearkent.com, to check out. I think that stuff's really interesting. So like PFAS is really important, really great, but there's also like these sustainability stories that we're not hearing about much. So I'm like, okay, we can give this kind of a spotlight too. Because we can write about PFAS for a whole month, but like when we have this conversation, that's when we kind of get into the nitty gritty of it. So when it comes to like, no one's really giving this cool sustainability initiative anything, like, okay, why is it cool? Let's talk about it. So I like that. I like that people come on here with like, especially these small companies that were like, we're really vulnerable and we're trying some cool stuff and we want to tell people about our cool stuff. I'm like, I want to tell people about your cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. That's why we're all here, right?
That's right.
So that's my take on it. I'm just like, I like cool stories. I like people doing cool things that are important, and I like hearing people's passion. And that's kind of the crux of the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a huge power in kind of B2C innovation, right? Business to business being B2B, and then B2C being business to consumer. When you get that consumer interaction, that's when you really start raising awareness and people making decisions on their day-to-day level that can then impact that like broader B2B decisions that affects us all.
As much as the show is for people in the industry, I also want to position it to people who aren't in the industry to learn, oh, I should be thinking about this a little better because I'm a contributor to some terrible stuff that I had no idea about.
That's right. Maybe we could do a follow-up podcast after I take some middle schoolers to a stinky wastewater treatment facility. Then we can have them on your podcast and they can talk about their experience.
That would be good. But if it's just 15 minutes and then going, it stinks, that's fine too. Yeah. Because that was my first experience. I was like, wow, this kind of sucks. I can't believe you guys do this all day long.
That's right.
Alexis, thank you so much. Where can people find more about AxNano and what you do?
They can visit our website at axnano.com. They can follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll be at the upcoming Battelle conference in Fort Worth, Texas in June.
Very fun. It'll be nice and toasty down there.
Yes. Cool. Thank goodness for air conditioning.
No kidding. Alexis, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Waste World Podcast. Thank you again to Alexis for joining me. We're learning that PFAS is no longer just this emerging issue, but it's a widespread challenge, and it's reshaping how we think about water, waste, and environmental responsibility. And I think today we got some valuable insights into how new technologies are moving beyond containment toward true destruction. Speed and scalability matter here. On-site solutions are becoming increasingly important, so let's make sure we're continuing those conversations with people like Alexis, with people across the industry. Let's get some solutions. Let's do it together. Okay, that was the episode. Thank you again for everyone for listening. Make sure you're subscribing to the show. Make sure you're leaving a review to the show and visit waste360.com for more insights from across the industry, for more episodes of the Waste World Podcast. We got it all for you. We don't want you to be left out. We don't want you to be behind. So make sure you check out waste360.com and the other episodes of the Waste World Podcast for all these valuable insights you're looking for. We got them all. All right. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's our world. Let's not waste it.